Initially, insurance carriers will come in. We'll probably have somewhere between 20 and 25 carriers come in. They'll probably set up in RVs, and they will start writing checks initially that will be living expense money. This will be the dollars just to help people go find a place to live, sustenance dollars. Then you'll be signed up where adjusters will come and inspect the damage.
Sounds easy, but it is not so easy. A real estate data company estimates $28 to $47 billion in losses from that hurricane are expected. It is the costliest Florida storm since Hurricane Andrew back in 1992. Many hard hit by the hurricane simply don't have the insurance they're going to need to rebuild. The New York Times reports in the counties whose residents were told to evacuate, just 18.5% of homes have coverage through the National Flood Insurance Program. As our own Kerry Sanders has more on how Florida insurance companies are facing their own massive challenges. They can't afford to stay in business.
Anyone with a mortgage in a flood zone is required to carry federal flood insurance, but wind damage is covered by your homeowner's policy. In Florida, 6 insurance companies have claimed insolvency just this year. Homeowners complain those that are still in business here have jacked up premiums.
I'd say probably about a 30% increase for myself. Others, I've seen them, rise 50%, 100%, and some have just been canceled altogether.
The hardest hit counties in the storm's path experienced huge population booms in the last 3 decades. Joining us now to discuss, Alex Harris, climate change and hurricane reporter for the Miami Herald, and our dear friend David Jolly, a former Republican congressman from the state of Florida who is fortunately safe in Pennsylvania tonight. Alex, just how complicated is insurance in Florida right now? Is it that they are jacking their premiums, or can they just not afford to stay in business given the amount of storms and damage that state faces?
Yeah, the insurance market is really tough in Florida right now. We have all of these companies going belly up and flipping their clients over to Citizens, our state-run insurer of last resort, and that's stressing people out. But also, these companies are forced to raise these rates because of things like fraudulent claims and assignment of benefit fraud. There's a lot going on in the financial market insurance right now, and Florida isn't the only place struggling, but up until this week, one of the reasons we weren't struggling was that we hadn't had a storm, and now we expect that to be a domino that really sets off some crisis every year.
And David, you've been a beneficiary. The Florida real estate market has been hot, hot, hot. You've got pretty lax zoning laws there, and things are built in all sorts of areas that maybe shouldn't be. So how do you solve for this, especially the insurance problem? Is it the state that should get involved? These are private homes.
Yeah, it's a fascinating question, Stephanie. Who bears the risk of a homeowner's home ownership, if you will? And as Alex just mentioned, the homeowners or home insurance industry in the state of Florida is really collapsing. And without federal intervention to bear much of the loss of this storm, we would further see the collapse of the homeowners insurance industry in Florida. So what do? Who bears that risk? The reality is in flood zones, there is no private sector product to absorb the risk of a homeowner. So the federal government has a national flood insurance program, which in your earlier statement, only 15% of those in the strike zone had that. That's because only 13 to 15% of mortgage companies required it for those areas. So do we subsidize the risk of them rebuilding? That is the public policy question, right? Should people actually be able to build in areas where we know we have had in the last 5 years 3 major hurricanes, Michael, Irma, and now Ian? Should private home builders be able to build homes in those areas with the government subsidizing that risk? That's a real policy question. The one thing I would point out, though, Stephanie, is when we ask questions about floods and hurricanes, we also have to aggregate the risks of wildfires in the West, of ice in the Midwest, of tornadoes in Tornado Alley. How do we handle natural disaster risk? Is that truly going to be a private sector risk product, or is the government going to play a role in that?
Alex, let's talk about the communities that were hardest hit. They were among the fastest growing in the state. Is that going to change after Ian? Think about all the people who moved to Florida in the last few years.
Right. Florida has seen an incredible population boom, especially after the pandemic. People really just wanted to come be in this state. And Punta Gorda, one of the places where the eyewall came ashore, was one of the fastest growing cities in the country the last couple of years. So we've seen a massive influx, which means there was a lot of people who've never experienced a storm, maybe didn't realize the problems of going with the cheapest insurance you could possibly get, maybe didn't realize if they were outside a flood zone, the importance of maybe just having flood insurance just in case something like this happened. So we're expecting to see, there's a lot of people that are going to be lining up asking for a lot of money from the federal government, from their insurance companies, from charities. There is going to be so many billions of dollars of damage here. But I have no doubt that people will rebuild back here. Florida really has never learned not to build in places that are scary and dangerous and are going to get walloped year after year after year with storms. We see it everywhere. You mentioned Irma. All of those neighborhoods are full back up. Mexico Beach, where Hurricane Michael came ashore a couple of years ago, all the way full again. These communities, people do not shy away from them after they're hit. In fact, they come back and they build taller houses. They build more dense. We are clustering our risk around the coast, despite the risks of climate change and stronger storms.
Well, that is also because real estate development is one of the most lucrative businesses in this country that has one of the most tax-friendly businesses that get hooked up by our tax code year after year. David, quickly before we go, Florida also has one of the highest percentages of senior citizens, people living with disabilities. Did Florida do a good enough job helping these vulnerable people in vulnerable communities evacuate? They can't just hop in their cars and drive.
Yeah, listen, Florida is very prepared for storms, and I think the risk of life would be much greater if we did not have such an experienced infrastructure in the state of Florida for storms. But your question is a very good one, because I got the question in the last 24 hours, who doesn't leave? Who doesn't evacuate? And the reality is there are a lot of reasons, but the most important one is those without means, those without opportunity, those without the communication that sometimes we take for granted. Municipalities make public shelters available, but how do we make sure that people can get there? The economic disparity is a pressing question in moments like this, and I think it's one that should be investigated coming out of Hurricane Ian.
Leaving is a privilege. We need to remember that. Mother Nature hits the poorest communities the hardest. Alex Harris, thank you so much for your work. Really important reporting down there. David Jolly, I'm glad you and your family are safe.